Build your own dreams, BYD. Actually, you don't need to build your dreams because this Chinese car company are going to do it for you. BYD is actually the largest manufacturer in the world of lithium-ion batteries and has been for many years. But this is their first release of an electric car in Britain and Europe. They've been making electric buses and all sorts of other things in other parts of the world. What is it? It's a 260-mile range C-segment SUV that has very different battery technology and also promises to be incredibly efficient in very cold weather, which could be quite apt today. It's also going to send the shiver me timbers up Kia, Hyundai and VW because it has very similar performance and range credentials. So without further ado, let's do this electric car review here on the Late Break Show. I'm Drake. And this episode is proudly supported by blackcircles.com, Britain's largest online tyre retailer. I forgot to mention in the intro the car's model name. It's called the BYD Atto 3. What does Atto mean? Well, apparently, Atto means a fraction of a second. It's like a very, very small increment of a second. And 3 stands for something which I'll talk about a bit later, but it's the underpinnings of this car. The platform of the car is called the E-Platform 3.0, which BYD are very proud of, and it's going to underpin many other BYD models that we're going to see in the future. But before we go on to that, let's have a look at the front end. Design-wise, I'm getting vibes of the Lucid Air Saloon. There's also a BYD model that we haven't got yet called the Han, H-A-N, not ham like the meat stuff, and the Han is a really slippery saloon with a similar face. So we've got this sort of like frosted aluminium looking kind of brow, and there is a full width LED light bar front and rear. But really this is a dragon face, which BYD call it. The idea being it's sort of the eyes and the kind of moustache of a Chinese dragon. I don't know if I'm seeing that, but what I do see is something that's pretty tasteful, actually. I'm sure there's active flaps down there for battery thermal management, and this car really does go to town on the thermal management with its very efficient heat pump and these interesting blade-style battery cells which BYD develop in-house. I said before, BYD actually were first seen in this country in 1995, where they started introducing electric buses. They are the #1 seller of electric buses globally. You will have probably travelled on a BYD electric bus at some point, and in fact the phone in your pocket probably has a BYD cell in it. 1 in 5 phones in this whole world that we live in has a BYD cell in it. I like this. I think it's pretty good. Front wheel drive, front motored, and I'm going to pop the bonnet now. 150 kilowatt motor, 204 horsepower, and like I said in the intro, that's really similar to the Kia Soul and the E-Niro. In fact, the 0 to 60 is very similar to the Kia E-Niro and Soul. So they've definitely aiming their sights at that car. Let's pop the bonnet. Now, what's interesting under here for me is the fact there's a huge amount of space before you even see the electric motor and everything. It's a very compact drive unit. And as such, they could have probably put a frunk/fruit in here for storage, but they haven't. And they could have easily made the car shorter, which is odd because in the press release of this car and the conference, they said this has an 8-into-1 powertrain unit, which combines loads of things like the battery management system, onboard charger, BMS, which battery management system, all into one compact unit, which is a kind of a world first. And it does look tiny and low. But as such, that means you could have made this whole thing shorter, I think, and given it some more storage. But needless to say, There's no plastic covers on it. You can see it all, which is good. I like that about it. 228 pounds-feet of torque from this 150 kilowatt motor. 7.3 seconds to 62. So it is right in the early sevens, just like the Kia Soul, of which I ran a long-term test Soul a couple of years ago. I really enjoyed it. I'll put a link above my head for that. And 0.29 drag coefficient. So again, a very slippery car, considering it's an SUV as well, which is slightly higher seating position. And that is simply because it's the most popular derivative of car on sale, which is a shame in my head. But anyway. Right, let's see what the BYD Atto 3. Every time I say BYD, in my head, I think of that song by Michael Jackson on the Thriller album, PYT. Every single time. And I say PYT, and it's irritating for me and everybody around me. So the weather's obviously grim today, but it's a good opportunity to see how the heat pump works on this car. And this is a BYD's own design, just like BYD make in-house their own battery packs, cells, motors, the heat pump, which is why they can control their own game a little bit better, because they don't outsource as much stuff. They've sold 3.5 million passenger vehicles to date, just not in Britain or not much in Europe. So they're not a well-known brand on the front of a car for us, but in their native China, they're very well known. 260 mile range WLTP from that 60 kilowatt hour battery pack. Now, I'll put the charging stats on screen. To be honest with you, I should have done it while I was stood outside, but it's frankly too cold and miserable today. 260, it's saying 94%, 247 miles. It seems to be telling the truth. The heat pump kicked in really quickly. Heated seats as standard. That heat pump, obviously as standard, which for a colder weather climate like the UK, I think is absolutely critical. As I'm cruising through the village, what I can tell you is it's very quiet, even though it's got a full glass pano roof. And this thing weighs 1,750 kilos curb weight, so I'm going to be interested to know what it feels like driving it into corners and what the handling's like. The screen fascinates me. I mean, I've just kept it at portrait for now, but I don't really know why I'd want to shift it around. It's the sort of thing which my children, my son especially, would love pressing the buttons of to shift it from there to there. But this thing's good for me. I mean, head-up display is probably better, but this works well. And so far, navigating all the infotainment has been pretty painless, even for a thicko like me. So these cells, these battery cells, I think the battery pack weighs about 400 kilos in here. It's 400 volts. BYD has created, has invented this blade type cell layout. So there's various different cell layout. You might have heard of prismatic, you might have heard of cylindrical, all of those things. But basically, A, it does without cobalt, and B, you normally have to assemble cells into modules that are then in a pack. What BYD have told me is that really this does away with the module element. Blade cells can just be put into packs. So less packaging, less space used, which means you can make a more energy dense pack. And I guess in turn maybe lighter because less material is being used. And it's a more docile thing, and you won't get thermal runaway, which is when basically the pack either shorts out or it gets pierced and it can start to build and build and build in heat. BYD have done what they call the nail test, where they stick a nail through it when it's live to see what happens, and it's failed safe. I don't think that's part of the Euro NCap, but talking of conventional safety testing, this is a 5-star Euro NCAP car, and if I have any footage of it being crashed professionally, I'll put that on the screen now. The steering wheel feels really small, in a good way. What interests me about brands like BYD that seemingly coming out of nowhere to the British market, but have been around a while, is them together with people like MG. And I reviewed the MG4 and it was a surprisingly good car. I'll put a link above my head for that. Is the quality and the level of equipment for the money is really good. And China is still the world leader, probably, or certainly the largest producer of lithium-ion battery packs, maybe closely followed by the Koreans, which is why those two, you know, the Chinese and the Koreans, are making such strong inroads into the world of EVs. There's a real kind of premium glide to the way the car drives, actually. Probably helped by the fact it's not on stupidly large wheels. It's on 18s. They don't look like little silly skateboard wheels. They've got a larger sidewall, and that definitely helps with the comfort level. Now, when you come to buying new tyres for your car, be it for an electric car like this, or for a sports car, or a van, then go to the Black Circles website, blackcircles.com. Head to the Black Circles website, enter your vehicle registration number and your postcode, and then you'll find the most suitable tyres for your car and your budget. There are thousands of reviews of different tyres from real customers to help you choose the best tyres for your car. And with the Black Circles Click and Fit service, with over 2,000 tyre fitting partners, there will be a garage or a mobile tyre fitter conveniently located near you. In profile then, the Atto 3, it's tasteful, but it's not exactly revolutionary. It's very similar and reminiscent to so many kind of soft roady SUVs out there at the moment. I mean, in terms of design, it's not going to set you on fire, but it's also not offensive. You can see here on the charging door, it says BYD design. That's because there's 3 different trim levels for the Atto 3. Design being the top spec car, entry level being active, and then comfort in the middle. The car starts at 36,500 quid. It's just under 39 for this top spec car. What's really good is, as standard, you get things like full size opening panoramic roof. You get a heat pump as standard and 18-inch wheels. But also with the comfort and the design cars, you get 11 kilowatt onboard charger, which I think is well worth having, amongst numerous other kits. And you're looking at the colour going, it's a nice colour red. You're absolutely right, it is a nice colour red. It's called Parkour Red. It launches in 5 colours: surfing blue, lifestyle surfing; skiing white, lifestyle skiing; climbing grey, lifestyle climbing; Parkour Red, I do parkour all the time; exploring green, I love green, I love nature, I'm in. Then we'll come around to the back end here. See this finishing panel? It's a bit like fish skin. We're seeing this a lot on modern car design. In fact, the Kia E-Niro, the revised E-Niro, has something similar. And I reviewed that car when it first came out, and I'll put a link above my head. And the Cupra Born has something similar as well. The back end of the Atto 3, again, it's tasteful. It's not particularly revolutionary or cutting in design. This full width LED kind of mask, it really reminds me of the Cupra Born rear signature. I'm pretty sure I did review the Cupra Born. I went on a road trip in it, another electric contender. I'll put a link above my head for that. The fact that it says build your dreams right the way across the back, I find that a little bit embarrassing. It looks like somebody's done it themselves. I know the car's BYD. I would probably take that off. There's actually no other badges on this particular car, so there's a huge concave panel with nothing else going on in it, which does look a bit odd. But really, the most important bit at the back is this. Electric tailgate. Oh, and crucially, it has a rear wiper, which is really useful in weather like this. I've just driven here in an Aura Funky Cat, another new Chinese branded car, which is great in many ways, but it doesn't have a rear wiper. And it's such an attractor of dirt at the back end, I have to clean the boot every 2 days. In here then, the Atto 3 has a false floor with a very tasteful, chunky rubber boot liner, which I do like as a practical dad. With the parcel shelf in place, 440 litre boot space, which is average, I would say, for this kind of car. It's not exclusive to the Atto 3, the fact that this shape, this chamfer here just cuts off so much useful practicality space, and it annoys me as a motoring journalist, but it's the world we live in where people think SUVs are a great shape of car. If you were to take this out, I think it's 585 litres of boot space with the seats up, filled to the roof. I'll put the stats on screen for how much storage it is if you drop the 60/40 rear seats. But this is a false floor. In order to get a flat entry point, they've put a false floor here, and you can actually drop it down lower, but at the moment all of the charging cables are in here, so you can pull it back and drop it down lower if you so wish. I'll demonstrate that now. Oh, it's got these quite deep wells either side. So actually, yeah, we've seen this in a lot of electric cars of this shape. You know, cars like the Kia Soul hasn't got a particularly big boot. There's many cars which could, I think, should have a bigger boot for the size of the car. But what you do get in the Atto 3 is a completely flat floor in the back. This will do 30 to 80% charge at a constant 88 kilowatts in 29 minutes. And as I showed you originally, the charger porthole is on the front wing on this side. For me, when an electric car will comfortably cover 200 real world miles with people in it and stuff in it and the heating on, I think that's a big milestone. I think people forget that 200 miles is 3, sometimes 4 hour journey. And obviously if you have a car like this with 260 miles and it can go in the city, urban combined mileage will be even more. Now down here, the physical buttons, I've got mode. And if I click mode, I think on this little binnacle here, look, it goes into, so it goes eco, sport, normal. And you have got this little tab here, again, like a knurled button, as well as a physical volume wheel, which is great. I can change, I think, the level of regen. It's coming up in this little column on the left, this graphic on the left. So let's press on a bit. It is -2 or something today, so, and it's not the kind of car, despite the fact it's got sport seats, it's not a sporty car. What it is, I think so far, the ride is really pleasing. The most important part of EV ownership is your range, followed by your efficiency, which kind of work hand in hand, I know. And I think for people like BYD who are trying to break the market, they've obviously gone quite luxurious with this, with a price tag of 36.5 starting, up to 39. It'd be great to see a simpler version, using this amazing battery tech that they've got. But they've thought of the heat pump being important for these sorts of markets. Norway's a really important market. Germany's a really important market. And we're in a world now where the conventional legacy manufacturers, like your Mercedes of the world, your Volkswagens, your Audis, your Fords, you know, they're really struggling to deliver convincing electric car products soon enough compared to people like the Chinese. The back end actually reminds me of a combination, that huge deep boot lid that's quite devoid of much character. It reminds me of the Nissan Ariya. I did a little drive of the Nissan Ariya in a previous video. I'll put the link to that above my head, because if you haven't already subscribed to the Late Break Show, you ought to know that 50% at least of my new car reviews are electric cars. Why? Because I've always been fascinated with electric cars, which is why I started building the world's quickest street legal electric car back in 2012. That kept that record until I think Elon Musk might have kicked me out. No, Rimac. I think Rimac might have kicked me out. Well, I'm okay with that. Now this is interesting because the floor is lower than most EVs, even though the battery lives in the floor like all EVs, and it's this blade type of battery cell which BYD have patented and created, which allows basically allows the cells to be packaged in a smaller space in a more compact way. And as such, this is a totally flat floor back end. So I'm going to sit in the cabin here. And although this rear seat is not higher than the front seats, I don't think, it definitely feels like you've got a lot more space. Got a USB-C and USB-A there, and rear vents here with these strange little sort of semicircular, well, they're designed to look like dumbbells, I believe. We'll talk about the gym-inspired front end in a minute. Sport seats as standard. They call them sport seats because they've got an integral headrest. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't think a car like this needs sport seats, and also it does invade your kind of visibility, especially for young kids. The seats have all got piping on them. So as standard, they call it vegan leather. It's basically a type of vinyl. It's very, very soft to the touch, piped. But look at this door handle. Can you see this? Look at that. And it's got rhythm reactive LED lights all around this car. But because it's daylight, I can't really see them at the moment. But look at that. Very interesting. Again, it's gym inspired, and again there's something down here by the speaker which is music inspired, and we'll talk about that when we sit in the front. Loads of headroom back here actually, helped by the pano roof that opens at the front, and I love the fact that that's as standard, because I think more cars really benefit from having the light airy cabin. I've said it numerous times in features. That is great, especially for kids. That is less good, I think, for rear passengers, especially kids. It's probably worth me mentioning that the Atto 3 is the best-selling electric SUV in China for 11 consecutive months. It's been extremely popular in the home market. And I will now go on to the fact that all of the stuff in front of me is apparently inspired by gym equipment. Yes, true. Let me reach for my car pervert notebook, because this is quite funny. Okay, so 6-way adjustable seats these are, with the vegan leather sport seats, just so you know. Obviously it's a 5-seat car. Heated seats are standard, which I'm definitely putting on today because I can't feel my backside. There we go. These levers are similar to the ones at the back of the car. These door handles are apparently inspired by barbells. Okay. Kettlebell inspired gear selector, which I think is actually quite ergonomic, although I couldn't see the park button for ages. Maybe it's just because I'm dim. Free weight style air vents that I showed you in the back. They're supposed to look like, you know, circular weights on the rack. Treadmill grooved armrest with a hell of a deep storage bin down there, and wireless charging just there. I didn't catch whether or not this strangely ruffled, extremely soft touch rubber here is inspired by, I don't know, a discarded gym towel that's possibly got a little bit of body odor on it. I don't know, but it's really soft to the touch. And the dashboard's got this amazing kind of swoopy shape to it, which then sweeps up around the vents. Combination of kind of brushed aluminium effect plastic, stitched vinyl, and then this weird kind of like soft gym towel fabric. But needless to say, it's a very, very pleasant place actually to be in, and the feel of the buttons and the controls feels pretty good. Definitely not below that of Kia and Hyundai, for example. And as I've said before, Volkswagen, like the ID4, it's not as premium as the Volkswagens of old. Almost forgot to mention, this is not gym inspired, but what it is inspired by is music. If I open the door and I show you, I don't know if you can see down there, the door speaker, and the same in the back. It has strings. It has elasticated strings to hold stuff in the door bin. It's supposed to look like a guitar. I don't know if I can get a tune. Drake doesn't play the guitar. Air guitar, yes. Actual guitar. What about door bin guitar? Don't know. Does anybody play that? But the piece de resistance of the cabin of the Atto 3 is this. Either I can use this steering wheel button here, or I can use it on the touchscreen there, and I press it, and looky here, looky here. We go from Tesla style portrait to every other car on sale in the world at the moment, landscape. Now, it's cool, and I can't decide which one I prefer. Obviously it stands so proud of the dashboard, it just looks like a computer monitor. But what's the use of it? Is it in landscape you can watch videos when you're charging, or is it just a personal preference thing? The car has Spotify as standard, that we do know. Many other features. In fact, I go to the home page. There. It's quite Tesla-ish with that sort of just off-white simple background. It's not too in your face. And there are physical buttons for front window demist, I think rear window demist, and the drive modes. And actually there is snow and mud driving and ice driving, which I probably will need today. The steering wheel, 3-spoke, it's got a weird kind of contour lines around the BYD logo that aren't seen anywhere else. Well, I guess they're seen in the sort of discarded gym towel effect here. Buttons, physical buttons, not weird haptic stuff that VW have for adaptable cruise control on this side. and then on this side, telephone, infotainment, etc. But over here, you've got this little binnacle. So if I adjust manually the steering wheel, you can see it's mounted onto the steering column itself, which is things like regen, energy use, speed, that kind of thing. It's showing 96% of charge, 251 miles. This is a 60 kilowatt hour battery pack that lives down there, that's cobalt free. And it also will take you to 260 miles WLTP. So not quite as high as some of its competitors from Kia and Hyundai, and actually maybe MG4, but pretty solid considering the size of the battery. I'm really enjoying on a day like today the fact it has a rear wiper. And it's weird to say that in 2023, but so many cars have got no rear wiper. And in winter, it's a pain in the back door. It really is. The thing about that Blade battery pack, like so many electric cars really, is the pack obviously lives down there in the floor in a hole and gets married up and bolted in. But it's an integral part of the car's structural rigidity and safety. And it sits between the axles in case you have an impact at the front or the rear, and it's inboard enough so that it will survive a side impact safely. That's what the Euro NCap is all about. So even in sport mode, normally the throttle sharpens up a bit, but actually it doesn't feel as sharp as you'd expect it to, or not as I would expect it to. I'm going to stick it back to normal. And although it's got lane keep assist and all that stuff, it's not pushing and yanking me about as viciously and annoyingly as some other cars, like the Great Wall Motors Aura Funky Cat. That is a bit too nanny state for me. See, for me, it would be interesting if they use this platform and they develop a couple of other cars which have a more practical back end, you know, a more dog-friendly boot shape. Give me something that's more kind of Honda Element or Volvo V70 or something like that. I mean, look at the MG5. MG5 is an electric estate car. It's still the only electric estate car. I'm not finding enough kind of tight curves to explore the handling yet. But you know, it's not the kind of car which needs to have crisp handling, really, although the MG4 has got exceptional handling, I thought. It's more about a family car where the person in the back doesn't get travel sick, and Phil, the videographer, has told me already he thinks this is a more comfortable car than the Kia EV6, which is praise indeed. The throttle pedal has got quite a long throw, long travel. Yeah, nothing feels too sensitive. As in, you know, the brakes don't feel snatchy. You're sensing a bit of body roll here and there, which is to be expected, but so far, so good with driving impressions. And although the creativity is wild in here, outside I think they've kept it quite conservative, and that's probably intentional to try and penetrate the European market with something that's not too wacky. Maybe all this gym-inspired interior is there to just basically constantly goad you by saying, you're sitting down driving too much, you need to get out and do some strenuous exercise. It's like a subliminal message. BYD, PYT, pretty young thing. Did you know that we have a merch shop on the Late Break Show? Oh no, you didn't? Well, we do. You can buy Late Break Show merch. Just simply go into the description and there's a link there. You can go straight in and you can buy things like t-shirts, mugs, stickers, various interesting things, drinks bottles. I use one. They're great. Just saying. I'm going to do a 0 to 60. So I'm going to put it into Sport, okay? There's nobody behind me. No, nobody's behind me. This is not going to be the most exciting thing in the world. 7.3 seconds to 62. 3, 2, 1. Tiny bit of scrabbling because the weather's cold, and there you go, 62. It's all very smooth. The pedals actually, I noticed that quite early on. Long travel throttle, not a vague brake pedal, but not a sharp kind of like aggressive one either. There's a bit of travel in the controls, and even in sport mode, the steering, it's firm, but it's, you know, it is a little vague, but I'm probably being picky. I think the most important attribute to this is who's going to buy it, what are you going to use it for? You're going to use it for cruising along and probably in a family environment. And the comfort levels and the ride is really rather good. And in a weather like this, the heating is really rather good. And you get that as standard, which is really rather good. And you get Spotify as standard, which is really rather good. You get vehicle to load, which means you can charge stuff from your car or power stuff from your car as standard. That's pretty good. I've used this analogy before, but 10 years ago, Hyundai and Kia were not seen as premium brands. You wouldn't, as a middle-class person, want one on your drive, and you certainly wouldn't tell your friends that you bought one. Fast forward to today, people are proud to buy those cars because they've got long warranties, they're stylish, they're fit for purpose, and they're great value. The same way that middle-class people are quite happy to go to Lidl and Aldi. The MG4 is a really good electric car that people cannot get enough of because it's keenly priced and it seems to have an awful lot going on and reasonable quality. The BYD is a nameplate us Westerners have no idea what it is. But from what I've experienced today, I think there's an awful lot to love. There's a good package here of really good range, of interesting design where it counts, and I guess a good level of practicality and, keenly, efficiency. But would you buy one? Because this is in the most competitive electric car sector out there. And if you care about names and you care about what your friends think, you probably won't buy one. I would love to know in the comments whether you would consider this up against its rivals. I think that I would. Thanks for watching this rather chilly episode of The Late Break Show. If you haven't already subscribed, why not subscribe? We have an e-shop with merch. I'll show you in the description below. I'll put a link down there, and I'll put a link in there for our Patreon as well. You can support us via Patreon and get access to many videos early on and blogs from me. I am now going to get in this car with an incredible efficient heat pump because I am cold AF. Thank you.